please be civilized, no disruptions, no disrespectful comments. We have elected officials here with us. We're very honored to have them here. No comments that target anybody based on their race, ethnicity, etc. And that's basically it. Just please be respectful. Please limit your comments to a couple of minutes. And let's get started. So first, I'd like to take the committee roll and introduce the committee. So if we could start with
Esteban Herrera. Hi, guys.
Nicola Cox with Sullivan Ludlam Stoddard Neighborhood Association.
Beverly Newsom.
I'm Suki Chung, I'm the chair.
Yaakov Bierman, I think I'm still the vice chair, right?
I'm John Craver. I'm a community member of the board.
Tom Thomas, community member.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'd also like to welcome Council Member Crystal Hudson, who's here, and Borough President Antonio Reynoso. Okay, so we'd just like to do some quick updates. The City of Yes for Housing Opportunity is a citywide zoning text amendment that we've been reviewing for the last several months, almost the last year. We have a subcommittee that's been meeting to discuss this issue and study it. The text amendment has been certified as of April 29th, so we have 60 days as a community board to comment on this. So we should be ready to vote and comment as a board by our final meeting in June. So just to review our last subcommittee meeting, we discussed, had already, the text amendment, full text amendment has been released, and we discussed primarily the universal affordability proposal. And we did come up with a draft resolution on that. I think there was a lot of concern from a lot of the members, the effect that this would be having on our district, because it would substantially increase the zoning in the unrestricted R6 and R7 zoning districts, not just a little bit, but a lot. It's about 60% in the R6 districts, and about 30 to 45% in the R7 unrestricted districts. And as many of you know, the majority of our district is covered by these zones. That is different from other districts in the city and in Brooklyn where these zones are limited, or they're limited with contextual zoning. And the zoning increases for the contextual zones are indeed much smaller than these zoning increases. So this is going to really have a very strong impact on our district where there's already a lot of development capacity. So and the 60% of AMI level that's proposed as a voluntary affordable incentive to developers, we felt was not affordable for the district because 60% of AMI at this point equates to about $83,000 for a family of 3 as of 2024, versus our district's median annual household income, which is, some people are saying it's $66,000, $77,000, but it's clearly below that 60% of AMI level, and we have 30 to 40% of our households making less than $50,000 a year. So this is not serving the families in our district who need, or for that matter, our city, who most need affordable housing. And so I'll just quickly read through our draft resolution, which will be, when it's complete, we'll be discussing it at the general ULURP meeting next month. So we're at EB9's median annual household income dollars. And 40% of our households make less than $50,000 a year, whereas the City of Yes has stated that the justification for zoning density increases is the 0.39% vacancy rate for units renting for less than $1,100 per month. Yet the UAP level of affordability is at 60% of AMI, which is $83,880 for a family of 3 as of 2024. Therefore, CB9 does not consider the UAP units to be affordable for the households in our district or city who most need affordable housing. Whereas City of Yes aims to build 100,000 units across the city by 2040 by adding, quote, a little more housing everywhere, unquote, and whereas CB9 has already built 4,000 units of housing from 2010 to 2023, and whereas there are currently over 2,500 permitted units in the district, whereas over 75% of CB9's residents are people of color, and there has been an inadequate racial equity impact analysis with no predictions on the target population housing would be built for, whereas CB9 zoning already permits over 30,000 new units to be built, resulting in demolitions and displacements of tenants, whereas City of Yes UAP zoning increases are highest in R6 zones on narrow streets, and second highest in R7 zones compared with the zoning increases in contextually zoned communities, whereas most of District 9 is covered by R6 and R7 zoning. Therefore, the City of Yes UAP program would significantly increase the already high as-of-right development potential in our community, resulting in the direct displacement of tens of thousands of residents, the majority people of color. Therefore, CB9 strongly opposes the City of Yes zoning density increases and its destroy and rebuild model, which would trigger significant adverse environmental impacts, significant racial equity impacts, and fair housing violations. So that's what we said there. And there are still 2 more components. There's a low density component and a missing middle, medium density component, which also apply to our districts. It's not as big of an impact, but our district has the full gamut of zoning types from single family all the way up to high density. So we're looking at all of this. That's it for me. And 962, 972 Franklin Avenue certified yesterday, and I'll ask, some of the other committee members to give an update. I don't know who wants to start, Esteban or Tom?
So at this hearing, it was, I think the shadows came out as the most important issue that they dealt with. The shadows are going to be significant. Even though it's only 14 stories, it's still several hours a day over these unique plant life. So the commissioners seemed very concerned with that. There was concern about the affordability levels, as always, and I couldn't get a sense of which way they were leaning, but it really seemed like they were not pleased with the proposal. So, and this is the different proposal, but same plot of land where the Spice Factory was, and where the City Planning Commission, for the first time in ages, actually disapproved a project a couple of years ago. So.
Well, the current proposal is a down zoning, but it is still throwing shadows on the park of up to 2 hours. So I'm trained as an architect. I was particularly interested in the physical design aspects. And I'm pretty sure that the chairman is down on the project. But there were 2 members of the commission who were reluctant to go along with him and wanted other options to be looked at. There are no other options within that particular zoning category, none. But they're going to drag it out, but still in all, it was certified. Should not have been, but it was. Oh. 14? 14? Yeah. Well, the 2 commissioners seem to be looking for, can't you spread them apart and make a hole between them so the sun wouldn't go?
Yeah, they definitely suggested that.
Yeah, they were, I think the they were concerned that there was no mitigation. That's what they kept, isn't there some mitigation? Isn't there some way to mitigate the issue? And like, no, we can't move the conservatories, we can't move the nurseries. Artificial light would be very expensive, like, we've had conversations with BBG. If we lower it, it's like, they ran the shadow against this R7A, still had detrimental impact. R7D still had detrimental impact. The only thing that worked was 6A, which is where they are now. And so that's what they kept trying to figure out a way, but the analysis showed that there's really nothing but as of right that would really work, but I believe they still asked them to go back and take a look, right?
And the reason that as of right is correct is because in 1991, it was rezoned to protect the park from shadows. So this has already been dealt with decades ago.
So at this point, the timeline for ULURP, we have 60 days from certification as a community board to comment. 60 days. So we don't unfortunately have our full 60 days because we end at the end of June, but we're going to do the best that we can. And I at this point, only if it certifies in June. And so we obviously have raised this issue, but it happened. And so at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Councilmember Hudson to give us any updates that she might have on 962 Franklin and also her new land use framework for District 35.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Hi. How's everyone feeling? All right. How's everyone feeling? All right. Maybe not so great tonight. I don't know. Of course. So for 962 Franklin, my position is still what it's always been, which is that any project that is detrimental to the garden is a no. Nothing has changed. I know as much as Alicia wants me to be Lori, I'm not. And so I'm Crystal, just to be clear. And so unless, I think what we took from the same hearing was there's no, even if they were to make modifications to the massings to protect or to mitigate the shadows to the garden, there's no way for us to legally hold them to that. And I think that's like part of the big concern. So all of the conversation around mitigation, I think is specifically because even if they were to attempt to do so, there's no way that we would legally be able to hold them to that. So even if they were to present something different and then the rezoning is still approved, there's nothing to say that they wouldn't then go back and use the original massings. So like I said, my position has always been the same. I know I'm not the only one who grew up going to the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. It is a local jewel. It's, a Brooklyn jewel, one of New York City as well. And I think the sentiment that people were getting from the commission is probably because I don't think the city would want to approve something or support a project that would be detrimental to one of its own assets. So that's where I am on that. And then you wanted me to talk about the framework? Sure. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. Yes.
When you say they can return to their original plan, you mean the one that just got certified, the 14 stories, or the 39 that they had originally?
No, the 14 stories. So essentially, at this point in time, if they were to say, based on the two people that were mentioned, the two commissioners that were mentioned, if they were to say, oh, we'll move this, we'll change the massing here so that the shadows are no longer an impact on the garden, they can say that now, and then if we were to go through and let's say approve it, then there's nothing stopping them from using the original plans that they proposed for certification yesterday.
So in that case, what would the average citizen do that's not on the board or elected official to hold them, accountable?
Well, they have to go through the process. So there will be public engagement opportunities, both at the community board level and with the borough president, and then also again at the city council when it gets to us. So there will be plenty of opportunities to come out to those meetings, to speak up, and to share your perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Is it okay for me to call on people, or did you want to call on them, Suki? Okay. I haven't seen the details for that yet. They haven't come to the community board yet, right? They have not, yeah. So I don't have any details on that rezoning, so I can't speak on that. Was there a hand back there? No? Okay. Joe?
Do you think citizens are cheated of good government to the extent that there doesn't ever seem to be a time when new buildings are being proposed as now, that there's a necessary conversation about wraparound services? So if you have a new building, we don't hear anything about new police, sanitation, fire services. All these new buildings bring large numbers of people here, and they become a drain on government services. The post offices are shrinking, not getting bigger. So in some of these neighborhoods, people getting Christmas cards in February. So what I'm saying is that all these buildings drain government services, and we're being cheated, because I can't remember a single time anywhere that we've had these meetings, whether it's this neighborhood or anywhere else, and we include that as a consideration. So if a new building goes up, we have to talk about an increase in wraparound government services, including schools. So are we cheated? Are we cheated if we, we want
So
that?
I'm working on a rezoning in a different part of the district along Atlantic Avenue, and it's specifically for that reason, because I believe that we can't continue to put up buildings one by one without a full consideration for the comprehensive, plan. The borough president has championed a comprehensive plan for our borough when it comes to land use and development. And so that's the idea behind that rezoning as well, because we've had so much development in that particular area, Crown Heights, Prospect Heights, without consideration for, increased number of people on the subway platforms, for infrastructure upgrades, school seats, all of that. And so by doing the rezoning, we're doing that in partnership with the city, with the administration, with real tangible investments into the infrastructure, into street design, into all of those things, because I think we should be building comprehensively and thinking about whole neighborhoods rather than just spots or blocks or lots. Alicia.
You said you don't know anything about design of Franklin Avenue coming to Empire Boulevard, and yet, according to the newspaper, that you have been lobbying heavily for that particular project. So how is it that you're now coming to us after you've been lobbying for the project? And just for everyone to understand, that project on Empire Boulevard, they had put the application in 2 years ago, and they did not pay the fee until they lobbied according to the newspaper.
I'd like to see the article because I haven't been lobbied for that,
This is what the
for that
developers are
project.
saying, that they lobbied you, that they came to the community, that they worked with the community groups. and
No, we've shared our framework, the same framework that I'm about to talk about. We've shared our framework with anybody who said they're interested in doing anything in the district. I haven't seen any plans, any designs, any proposals for that. So that's why I can't speak to it. But I'd be interested to know what article you're referring to, because I haven't seen any article that said that.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm not finished. So what we would like for you to do is for you to reach out to the developer and ask him to have a conversation with the community residents before it becomes certified.
I'm happy to do that. Next.
We will coordinate that with us.
I'm happy to do that, as I said. Next question.
Moving back to 962 Franklin, a couple members of the TV9 Land Committee said that the only building that works right now is that which is as of right. But my concern is that with the universal affordability preference of the struggle or housing opportunity component of the city of yes, as an additional 20% bulk and density to any project, so long as it's affordable, will that impact the shadow situation of the garden, in terms of your framework? Is housing opportunity built in, or is your framework just?
My framework was done before the City of Yes stuff came to be. So no, that's not built in. But my framework, and I'll get to it in a second, my framework is really more about community needs and community preferences. So we did a survey around the district, asking people what they wanted to see in new development. So it's not necessarily a directly correlated to what would be City of Yes. It touches on density, but it's not. I'll get into it in a second and explain more, and then if you still have a question about it, I can get to you.
But if the land use committee for this is going to be pleased how universal affordability preference might, and the original vote as of right, might impact the garden.
There's another mic on the table.
The UAP preference would increase the zoning density on this site by 30%. It would go, and it would increase the permitted height from 7 stories to, I think, 9 or 10 stories, plus the rooftop bulkheads. And we did, in fact, ask the developer when they came to present whether they would be willing to do the 30% affordable housing at the 3.9 density that City of Yes proposes. And he said no. He said that wouldn't pencil out for them because they weren't getting additional market rate floor area. So they're still seeking the much higher zoning increase to a 7.2. Or I suppose they can build as of right at the 6A, which is the 3.0, the original 7 stories, where they wouldn't be required to do affordable housing. Yeah. So their proposal is an R8A inclusionary density, which is at 7.2. So City of Yes has the same density, right, for R8A inclusionary. So they wouldn't be adding on top of, right, when you go to an R8A under a City of Yes, you get an extra, you go from a 6.0 to a 7.2, which is what they're proposing under their current proposal. So they would not be capped at 14 stories, but that's what they're proposing under this rezoning. That they could go to a City of Yes. With their R8A, it's 15 stories, I believe. It's probably an extra, like, it might go up to 17, but I'd have to check.
Yeah.
So she's basically saying, right now, we know that they cannot move from an R6A without damaging the garden. That's why the garden had an R6A, because the R7A won't do. So if you allow, underneath the City of Yes, to increase that by 20%, you're now going to get those additional heights. Now, how are we going to protect the private gardens? Because this now becomes a massive.
Yeah, I think that case scenario is more, what she was specifically speaking to was an increase in this R8A that is already something that is implausible because the council member has specifically said she wouldn't support it. I wouldn't support it. It's not something that's going to happen in Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. Theoretically, though, the UAP on top of the as of right option is something that I think is a technical discussion we can have. We got to be very careful about how we have conversations about this because we're all trying to figure this out. But if we put these implausible and impossible scenarios, we're just going to scare people into fighting for something that's not going to happen. Let's fight for things that can actually happen. And now we want to specifically mention an example of why the UAP is concerning to us is this exact scenario where we would be harming a jewel within the Brooklyn community in the Botanical Gardens with the UAP that it'll increase it 20% for the 60% AMI, that is something we don't want to see, and we're concerned about that, so we're voting no because of that. Understandable, but I just want to be very careful that this idea that an R8A, I wouldn't let anything, it'll never happen, an R8A, that's ridiculous. And then on top of that, to think that we would allow for R8A and the UAP to be together is just not possible. So I don't want to entertain it because we'll say something like, oh, 15 stories, and then it'll be in the news and we'll all run out of here. It'll never happen. So I just want to stay within the realm of things that can actually happen and fight for that. And I think the one that Alicia spoke about specifically was the UAP on top of that as of right is something we should discuss, and I think is meaningful. Now I think it's I personally, I'm not in a technical position to know if that's exactly what would happen, but it's a great question that I will bring back to DCP and to my commissioner and have a discussion, because it is, I would be very concerned about the UAP affecting the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. Other areas, not so much. There, absolutely. So I want to have that discussion to see how we can talk about that in a meaningful way. I don't have the answer to that, though.
Mike had a question, yeah.
Are there any more questions on the the 962 Franklin? And I actually would like to recognize the representative from the Botanic Gardens is here. Thank you for coming.
Would you like to just tell us what the Brooklyn Botanic Garden is?
Yeah, absolutely. For those who were here last time, sure. Thank you. Yeah, for those who were here last time, our position has not changed. So we are not going to, support or anything, a project that would have an impact on us. As it's constituted now, it has an impact. So obviously we're not going to support it. And if anyone has any specific, I know Suki, you had asked about this. The developer did float this other design. We're still looking at it, so I don't have anything to say on that specifically. But we'll see. Oh, and again, my name is Ethan Lustig, the Director of Government Affairs at BBG.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions on 962 Franklin, or should I ask the council member to move on to the land use framework?
I think Mike has. Yeah, that's a very long explanation, but City of Yes is very extensive. Yeah, so there have already been. Do you want to talk about it, Borough President? Yeah, he's probably a little. Yeah, if you want to do that, and then I can.
I have a simple question. Real simple. Where did the whole idea about restructuring the park come from?
Wait, can we answer
Restructuring what part?
the gentleman's question first, and then?
Yes, and I think that's a
Oh, I don't know.
It was a proposal.
I don't know.
In place to restructure Jackie Robinson Playground.
Guys, the borough president is going to answer the question about City of Yes. Can we give him the floor?
They said that we asked for that.
Dion, hold your question.
So just the City of Yes, I'm gonna try to do the best I can here. Crash course. Now, where are the reporters in the building? Any reporters here? You want to raise your hand? All right. I don't mind reporters. I just want to know that they were here. But crash course. So I want everybody to take this with a grain of salt, and we're going to do the best we can. Because what we really want is DCP to be in the building to be able to answer these questions to the community in great detail, because they are the experts. But what's happened here is that we have a land use framework in the city of New York that has existed since like 1968, let's say, a long time ago. 1961, thank you so much. It existed a long time ago, and it spoke to a need or a growth for New York City in that time. We haven't seen a change in that for almost 60 years. For almost 60 years. The city is changing in a big way, and what we're seeing right now is that we're seeing something called spot zoning. Developers are coming into communities and are dictating the outcomes of these neighborhoods. They come one at a time to say, I want to build here. And then we talk about these situations where there's no wraparound services, there's no comprehensive planning that's happening. It's all ad hoc. They could build 10 independent buildings And none of those buildings would trigger the need for a school, for example. But if you build them all at the same time, EIS would say we need a school. But that doesn't happen because of this outdated system that we have in the city of New York. But this is what the city's trying to do, is say, how about instead of doing spot zoning or work in individual community, we're gonna do one framework for the entire city. It's not gonna answer all of it. It's not gonna be an example of Atlantic Avenue rezoning. We're not gonna have that conversation, but we're gonna do small things that make a large impact because we build a little bit everywhere. And the idea here is, and I'll give an example, is in places right now where you see a 1-story and it's all commercial. Can we build it on 1-story all commercial and do 2 stories of residential? If you live near a train station and there's 1 story, we want to make that 3, 4, 5 stories because you're close to transit and we feel like people could move through that. Let's say you have a house with a garage. Can we take that garage and convert it into an independent unit for accessory dwelling unit for like grandma that's living with you and you don't have any more space? Can we take a basement apartment and convert that into a bedroom for your son that now lives in your house because they can't afford a house in the city of New York? So a bunch of little things like that. Taking out right now, for example, there's the potential in Queens for a 2-family home to become a 3-family home. But you can't do it because if you make it a 3-family home, you have to add a parking spot. There's no way that 2 cars can fit in front of a house, so that nobody builds the 3rd floor. What we're saying is, or what the city of Yes is saying, we'll remove obligation for a parking spot and you could build the 3rd story. Because we want to, death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? By 1,000 cuts. We want to do a bunch of little things that add up to 100,000 units versus what de Blasio did, what Mayor Bloomberg did, which was pick 10 communities, mostly communities of color that are poor, and we're going to rezone those 10 communities and we're going to build 400,000 units. They're still going to have those conversations with these neighborhoods, but what we're going to do is change what we consider an outdated zoning model that doesn't even allow for that 2-family home to be a 3-family home, or that 2-family home to turn the garage into an accessory dwelling unit, or the parking spaces that are getting in the way for that family to think about going a 3rd story. That type of work. So now they're doing the city of Yes. There's about like 12, 13 proposals that are all in it. This Department of City Planning actually did a good job at explaining every single one in like a 1 or 2 sentence go. For the people that are really diving in deep into this, they should read the whole 150-page manual that's very complex and you should go into detail. But they did one where you're able to give it out to community members so they understand generally what it is. So that's what the city of Yes is doing this everywhere. Which also deals with another issue, is that the only communities that get rained upon by developers is Black and brown poor communities. The city of Yes doesn't care where you're from. You could be from Riverside in the Bronx or from Brownsville in Brooklyn. It applies to everybody equally. No discrimination based on the zoning that you have in your community. So that was the goal of the city of Yes. So that, in a sense, is what it is. And of course, people disagree. But I tried my best to give you a crash course on what it is. I also am tasking the Department of City Planning to go to every single community board and explain these things in detail, where you get to ask poignant questions like, is the UAP going to affect the height of a building that we don't want to affect the shadows of the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens? They can say right there on the spot, yes, it will, or no, it won't. And it'll explain to you why. And I think those are good questions that should be asked, and why DCP should be at the general board meeting answering every single question that this community could possibly have about the city of Yes. The last thing I wanted to say is, in the recommendations that were being made right now, or the draft recommendations, I just want to say that I think mitigation is deeply important. What I heard from the recommendations from the committee is no because, right? And no, like, are you saying that 60% AMI is too high? So if they come in and they say, we'll do it at 20% AMI, is that a possibility? We don't know, because it's very just no, with no discussion about mitigation of what would make us want to do that. Change is an inevitability. We want to control the change as opposed to what's happening now. What's happening now is that developers choose the change that you see in your community. Your community is changing right now. You are not stopping it. As of right, development is happening everywhere. And they're choosing the height of the building, the way it looks, who goes in it, whether or not they want to do affordable housing by getting into MIH, they determine all that for you. When you just say no, you're not having a voice, as in, if we know what the best case scenario is, we know what the future of our neighborhood should look like, We're gonna tell you what we want. And you might not be able to do it, but we're gonna tell you what we want. I believe the council member did that with her framework that I think is very aggressive framework, much more aggressive than I even would have put out. But she put an aggressive framework telling people, if you want to come into this community and do something, this is what I expect from you. You should give an expectation. So I would say when you do recommendations, say no if that's what you want to do. But say no and then tell us what a best case scenario for you would look like in seeing your community change. And I think that's the only reason I'm here. I'm not here to tell you to do it or not do it. That's your decision. You are the community board. I don't want to influence your decision. But I do want to say is, hey, maybe the UDP, UAP, maybe it's not 20%, it's 10%. We can do 10%, not in the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, but in general, we could do 10%. And we want it at 20% AMI, so we could actually take care of the poor residents in this community. Maybe that's something you would do. We don't even know. We don't even know that for you. If you do that, it gives me an opportunity to lobby and fight the administration on the things that you actually want. It allows me to negotiate. I know where I'm negotiating from. It does the same for your councilwoman. She cannot go in there and just say no. That's not how it works. It's like no because this is the AMIs are not low enough. The height is too much. The streets are not being taken care of. We're not talking about police departments. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. That's where she needs to be able to arm herself to negotiate. And what I'm hearing right now is just a no. And I would like you guys to change that no and explain more clearly what an alternative that is viable would look like. Unless you don't want to, that's fine. It's just my goal. I'm willing to take questions and I have any conversation.
I think this is a perfect
I want
segue.
the committee and then you go right
Yeah,
after.
I think
I'm
this
not
is a
going anywhere.
perfect segue for Councilmember Hudson to talk about her land use framework. Okay, one more question.
But I was in it. Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Okay,
Why would you
I just want
snatch it
to
from her? The committee member
I just want
wanted
to
ask a
respond to a
question.
statement that you made.
The committee member wanted to ask a question. You just snatched it from the chair.
I just wanted to respond to
She should be
a
rude.
question
She shouldn't be
statement that you
interrupting
made.
people. She
What
should be very
people
nice,
don't
and she's not doing that.
understand,
Don't let her.
what
go. Let her
people
go.
don't understand
This is her moment.
is that 40 communities were down underneath the Bloomberg administration. Most of them were white, affluent communities. Those are the ones that are going to get only the 20% increase. Every other community, every black and brown community in New York City will be getting 60%. That is not equal. That means is that those communities that had the protective zoning back during the Bloomberg administration will continue to have protective zoning underneath the city of Yes. This is not evening it out. So if you're allowing 60% in our neighborhoods where we did not get down zoned during the Bloomberg administration.
Yes, sir. 60%.
Excuse me.
What's the 60%? What's the 60%?
If we did not get that, if
What
we
is
didn't
the
get the
60%?
down zoning in our neighborhood, we're not going to get the 20% like every other neighborhood that was down zoned.
what's the 60%?
We're going to get the 60% increase in the R6s and the R7s. So it's not equal.
where
It
does
is
it say
still
that?
racist. It is
Where does it
still
say
a
that?
racist plan
Where does it
that
say that?
focuses on black communities and brown communities still taking the bulk of all of the development. Okay?
All right, so very quickly.
That's just a statement.
It is a statement. It isn't 60%. It's just like, that's the thing. I want you guys to be very careful. That's why DCP should be here. You just, like, the information that you're getting has to be solid. And, like, I'm coming in here letting you know that I know some information, and I'm giving you the best I can. And I believe that DCP, the experts on this, should be here answering your questions clearly and making sure that there's no misinformation being given. I don't want to come in here and misinform you in any way, shape, or form. But be very careful about where you're getting your information from. I just want you to be very careful. So I would just say, when DCP comes, ask those questions. Maybe she's right, but ask the questions. And I'm letting you know there is no 60% increase that it exists in the city of Yes. That's not what they're doing, because guess what? A 60% increase in the areas that have been rezoned would account for a lot more than 100,000 units of housing being built. And that's not the calculations in the worst case scenario put forth by DCP is not more than 100,000 units. So you just got to be very careful about the information you're getting. Because you know why? We're wasting our time fighting about something that is not plausible. The same thing that I just talked to you about, man. The idea here is that we can't waste time fighting over nonsense when there's real things and real issues that we do need to fight about. And you know what's gonna happen? The train is gonna leave. We're gonna be fighting about a scenario that can happen, while all these other communities, like Riverdale, like these white affluent communities, they're fighting the real fights. They understand exactly what they want. They understand they're not being lied to. They sat down, talked about how their community is going to be affected and how they can mitigate. And we're going to be fighting about something that is never going to happen, that doesn't exist. Don't do that. Wait till DCP gets here, prepare your questions, and be very aggressive when they get here, and make sure you ask them questions and have them respond to you on record. Because if they do it on record, we can hold them accountable.
Can we take a question from the committee?
The challenge that we have is that the UAP program is targeted to the high-density communities. Where are the high-density communities? They're primarily the communities of color. And that is where we get the additional heights. That's what we're talking about. The affordable units are being driven by UAP. That's us.
All right, can I just ask, 60%? The UAP clearly states it's 20%, right? And there's nowhere in the framework does it speak to 60% in these areas that you're talking about, right? Like, my thing is, I'm not here to support the city. My position will be told to you very clearly, and I don't hide from anything. You guys have my comprehensive plan, which clearly states many things that are already stated in the city of Yes. I've done things long before Eric Adams thought they were cool based on this development stuff. I know who I am. I'm more than happy to give you that comprehensive plan. But I guess what I'm saying, it's not that you're wrong. I'm not saying that you're wrong. But I want to be very careful about the 60%. But what's your ideal situation? What do you want? No change at all? Is that what you're asking for? Because that's okay too. This community doesn't want one.
We're not asking for no. We're asking, we don't want to set up a scenario where the incentive for the developer is to do a destroy and rebuild.
Okay,
Under R6. We're primarily an R6 community.
Right.
And we typically are underdeveloped right now.
Right.
And now with the additional heights, you could now be providing incentives for them to come and destroy our neighborhoods, our blocks, and put up apartment buildings.
So what do you want them to do? Build on top of the building? Do you want them to build on top of the buildings that already exist? Is that what you're asking for?
I want to protect and maintain and retain
Exactly.
the affordable units, the affordability. We were always an affordable community.
You can't,
When
you can't
MIH
have
came
affordable
along-
units if there's no new units being built, ma'am. All right, go ahead.
Okay. These affordability programs came along, and we started getting displacement. We started getting community. 626 came along. We had luxury, 20% affordable. Luxury and 20% affordable is not going to meet the needs of our community or any community in this city.
I agree.
All it's going to cause and has caused is displacement.
Agreed.
So what do we do to affect affordability levels that are meaningful to our communities? Right now, what we're seeing with City of Yes is just more of the same, but on steroids. And that's going to destroy our neighborhood. So that is why we had come up with the proposals that we have right now, because we're trying to protect the character, the affordability of our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I don't see anything as of right that's going to provide the wraparound services or anything else that you're talking about. We're basically handing over a blank check to developers and saying, we're going to stand out of your way and let you do what you want in our neighborhood.
No,
and not even have parking to go along with it.
And I want to disagree. I think they're already doing that. They're already doing it. I don't understand what neighborhood you're walking through. You guys want to come right now with me. One second. I'm gonna finish and go on. You can walk around this neighborhood right now and I'll show you the shiny buildings with windows that none of our people are living in. Right now it's happening. And there's this idea, so it's not that's the thing. That's the thing is, it's as of right. It is as of right. And what we're saying with the City of Yes, is that in the cases where they are as of right, if the developer, because the developer might not want to do it, the developer could be there like, I don't want to give more affordable units to this community, and then we're relegated back to the same thing that exists right now. Right now, what they're saying is the AUP opportunity is for more affordable housing in these scenarios where you're not seeing enough affordable housing. So let's say they have a R3 and they're moving up to a R6, they'll have the 20% AMI, which is not suitable for our communities, which is not doing it's not doing enough. It's not giving us enough affordable housing and affordable housing that's low enough. It's not doing both cases. It's not affordable and it's not enough, right? So this UAP is supposed to be on top of that building that is now 6 stories and exists right now in your neighborhood. If you want to add 2 extra stories, those will be exclusively affordable. That's the idea. You want more affordability? They're giving you that the only increases on buildings that are already existing in your community have to be exclusively affordable. That's what they're saying. And you're saying that you don't want, you can't build affordable housing if you're not building housing. And I guess what I'm saying is that what you're gonna do, and it's perfectly fine, it's a choice that you can make, is that you're saying that this community is going to continue to allow for developers to have exclusive right as to the outcomes of the community. What we're saying is in this case, you're doing as of right and you're killing us. If you're gonna build more housing or higher housing, we want it to be exclusively affordable. That's what they're saying. That's what I'm saying.
It's a false choice because people's homes are affected when all these new builds going up.
It's all affected, 100%.
Go up and all this.
We should fight property tax. That's another conversation.
Yeah, I mean, part of this is wrapped up in what you're saying. What City of Yes does is it takes away from us the ability to have an opinion, or even though our role is advisory, it's like, do it. No, but it is like there's no force.
Mine is
of law.
advisory as well.
Right. No, I get that. But as of right now, we don't get to say anything. This adds more as of right that we don't get to say anything about. And so that's why community boards are up in arms about it, because you're actually taking away our ability to have a say in these things. And that's really like I think that's the crux of the issue. Even more so than the details of the affordability and all of that, I think it really has to do with that. And you know, the way that development has worked here, the Bedford Union Armory, the Franklin Avenue rezoning, all of the buildings in the surrounding area, they're experiencing an insane amount of pressure. Deregulation through demolition, deregulation through substantial rehab. So we know what development does. And that's because starting with 626 Flatbush, they brought in a luxury market where one didn't exist. That's what creates the pressure on rents. That's what creates, our experience with development of any sort right now has not been great. It's displaced people. So
I would just say, I guess what I'm saying is right now, I feel like, do you have a voice right now in the as of right development that's happening in your community? You don't. You don't. So this idea that we're taking something away from you that you never had, like now we want to have a conversation and like enforce, like pass legislation that empowers community boards or borough presidents in a way that maybe the council members have the power for land use. We can have that conversation. But you're talking about a scenario that just doesn't exist. What we're saying in the cases where the as of right development is already going to happen, should a developer want to do more, it has to be affordable. That's the conversation we're having. You already don't have a choice. This is just like in the case where the as of right is happening, you get more affordable housing. That's all. Like what I'm saying is that this idea that you have a say in the as of right is just not real. It's not there.
No, I'm not saying as of right. I'm saying the way that this has been presented by the administration is that it is too hard and you have to go through too many hoops to go through the community board, to go through ULURP, all this stuff, and this is going to streamline that for developers.
No. So it's a couple of things. Atlantic Avenue, big rezonings where we're talking about going 20 stories, going 30 stories, going 40 stories, like in Winnisburg, they went 40 stories, let's say. Those big developments still have to go to the standard ULURP process. That's why what we're talking about here, especially with accessory dwelling units, are one unit, a garage being converted into like a studio, right? Like we're not talking about massive, like significant massings around the city that we no longer, the council member would never agree to that. No council member would agree to this full redevelopment in one swath of New York City that we're gonna turn all the R6s into R8s. It's just not something that would happen. We're talking about, again, a death by 1,000 cuts. We're talking about very small opportunities for small growth everywhere, all at once. That's what we're doing. But the Atlantic Avenue rezoning is still happening right now. It's happening, and this City of Yes doesn't change what's happening in that almost at all. You guys are gonna have a say in that. Is this the community board that has a say?
No, that's Community Board 8, and I have some comments on that too. But the other thing here is, and this is like, I'm sure you know ANHD, so their position is the same on this. The communities that had borne the brunt of development, we're not starting in an equal place. So if you start everybody from the same spot in the city, then you're still going to have those same communities that already did their development and already paid their, did their share. We're not starting at the same place. And like City of Yes does not account for that at all, and it should. It should say these communities that haven't had any development need to go first.
So this is a good clarifying question. A good clarifying response that I think I want to emphasize on. The idea here, so maybe it's not the 60%, but what they're trying to say, which I think I'm getting now, is that during the Bloomberg administration, there were downzonings that happened. So people went from R6s to R5s or stood R6 and didn't see one increase in development, right? So those people didn't see increases. So now if you add 20% housing to a place that did nothing, they just get 20% housing. What they're trying to say is in our case, where we see a lot of development happening in black and brown neighborhoods, and we saw an increase of, let's say, 40% housing increase in that neighborhood, this 20% AUP is going to account for like 60% increase overall. So that's a different projection. That's a different explanation to what it is. And it's not that complicated. I think I said it complicated, but I see what you're saying. So then, arguably, in the cases where Mike Bloomberg downzoned those areas, which I thought was a big mistake when was racist, right? And he did them. The conversation for me is like, we do want to right size it. We want AUPs in areas that had a downzoning during the Bloomberg administration to be 40%. That's what we want. And in these communities that have been built already, we want to do 10%. And guess what? You still get the 100,000 units of housing that you want overall in the city, but the people that are going to do the mass of the work are the people that got the downzonings. I'm down to have this conversation like that. But all I'm trying to say, I'm not supporting the mayor. I'm not against the community. That's crazy. We're here for you. But I want to have a real conversation. And I think what's happening is that we're not giving alternatives to the council member, to me, and to the administration. We're gonna end up losing. If you don't mitigate, you just lose. And you guys have been a community board that has fought. This community board has fought every single time, has said no to almost every single development that comes in here. And it's still happening. It's still happening. You're losing. And I guess what I'm saying is, like, let's talk about mitigation. What can we do to actually win? And we're not, and I don't think we're having the right conversation for that.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you, council member. Thank you, Mr. Borough President. I live in an R2 block. My family's lived here since '82, and one block over is not R2. When my mother was dying of cancer, we were talking about building a room on the basement floor. We don't have to take her down 2 floors every time she goes to the hospital. We weren't allowed to do it. 5 houses down in the next block, they're allowed to do it. This is an example of something where I'm a resident in an R2, which I would have a positive effect. I would be able to put a room downstairs. But I think I appreciate how candid you were and how clear you were tonight. And this is the constant debate that we've been having I've been on the board close to 10 years, and I've been on this committee on and off for many years, and there's always a debate. There is a portion of the committee and of the board that say, vote no without conditions, because once you open the door to conditions, then you're giving them an opportunity to say yes. Then there are those that where I sort of feel that if you negotiate and you talk about conditions, you talk about what you want, there's a chance we'll have impact and we'll get something for the community. So if you could briefly just maybe, is that true? Is it true that once we say this is what we need, so it's no, but this is how it could benefit the community? Do we make it easier for them to say yes and what the developer wants? Or are our considerations, our requests actually considered, and can we have impact if we engage and articulate what we want?
That's a very good question. How do you have impact, and whether or not the decisions you're making to not make recommendations or to make recommendations hurt that opportunity? It varies. It does vary. You guys can say yes to everything and have a council member that says no to everything. You guys can say no to everything and have a council member that says yes to everything. And I think it's an accountability conversation, to be perfectly honest. I think what the stipulations does is that it gives a council member an ability to negotiate. And now, like, what we do, like, I want to be honest. I think that Councilmember Hudson's proposal that she's pushing, the what is it called? The framework is unusually aggressive. I don't think it's something that developers are going to look like I want. And I want to empower her, like, more power to you. Right? Like, that's very good because you're starting off from a condition of negotiation that is very high. Because developers come in on a condition of negotiation that is very low. We don't want to do any extra affordable housing. We're going to give you MIH and nothing more. And they want to walk away. Now they're coming into the table understanding that we're starting at a very high level. I think negotiating is important because let's say if I was a betting person, I think the city of Yes passes, personally, right? If it's going to pass, you don't want it to pass out blanket the way the city wrote it. You want it to benefit your community in as many ways as possible. Maybe you guys don't like 10 of those things, but you would be able to tolerate it or deal with it more if you got these 5 things. Let us negotiate those 5 things if we think that it's going to move forward. I don't think a no with stipulations affects that in any way, shape, or form, but it gives real ammo for the council member to use. Is like, this is what my community wants. I want to focus on this versus not knowing. And then the council members negotiating things that the community never asked for in the first place, but we don't know what you're asking for. We have to make it up or use our own judgment to fight for the things that you guys haven't told us you want to fight for. So all I'm saying is, I think a no with stipulations is deeply valuable, personally.
I have a
You know,
quick
you
question.
publicly stated that it was racist, so that's good. You would make a good witness. I don't think we're without options. Federal civil rights laws give us options with respect to racist actions that impact people in terms of housing. The federal fair housing law is sitting there waiting for us to call it in.
I don't disagree. ANHD, so I just want to say this. The housing groups like ANHD are proactively looking into the situation that was put forth by.
Fair Housing Act, and we're gonna bring you as a witness.
I'm more than happy to be there. More than happy to be a witness that what Michael Bloomberg did in those downzonings was racist. I think that because he did it based on race. All of the ANHD and housing organizations are looking to see if they can undo the work that Bloomberg put forth to begin with. And as elected officials, this member deference conversation is changing a bit. We're talking to these members in white districts that traditionally don't do any development, and we're not telling them that they have carte blanche with member deference to do whatever they want. We're saying we will challenge you now. We're not gonna let you just do nothing. We have Bay Ridge built 7 units of affordable housing in 60 years. That is an unacceptable outcome. So now when it comes up, that council member has a lot of pressure on them to do right and build more affordable housing. That didn't happen before. Before it was just like any council member wants to say no, is a no across the board. That's not how it's working anymore. In this district, they've done, I don't want to say they've done enough personally, but they've done their share of building housing and building affordable housing. So now when Councilmember Hudson says she doesn't want to do this Franklin Avenue thing, nobody's gonna fight her on it. They know that she's coming from a place and a community that's done their part. These other communities have not. And it just gives us more life, more to fight with. And I'm just saying, a no with conditions is more valuable than just a no.
So I have one quick question for you, Borough President. To your point about wanting to have more say over the as-of-right development, would you support us in coming up with a community-generated plan so that communities can have a voice in this, as opposed to a plan that's coming from city planning?
I would say this, yes, if you guys are serious. So let me put it like this. We need housing in this city, and I believe supply is deeply important. I think we need a lot of affordable housing. If you take a number and say, look, we're gonna build 4,000 units of housing in this community in the next 10 years, but we're gonna tell you where we wanna see it. That's a real conversation. But a conversation to present me with a zoning framework that builds 0 affordable housing, I'm just not gonna take it seriously. That's not the conversation I need to have when we have 70,000 people in homeless shelters that were here long before the migrants got here. We need more housing, and I want to have a real conversation about it. I want it to be mostly affordable. If you guys are serious about where you want to build it, say, you know what, on this block we could tolerate that, but we're not going to do it on this block. I'm more than happy to have that conversation. But a no, or we want a down zoning, I won't support that.
I see. Okay, Dion, yeah.
I'm sitting here and I'm listening to everybody offer what they have to offer. And I'm kind of stumped on the new buildings we talked about in the neighborhood. Correct me if I'm wrong, people. They're about 50% occupied. There's none of the buildings that I've seen that are 100% occupied that have gone up in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
That's one.
Yep.
And that's really disturbing because I'm concerned that they'll be turned into shelters, like what we had already happened in Naples, right? And everybody knows we all went to court, and a number of us have taken, different groups in this neighborhood have taken these reports. All right, fine. What are we doing to protect the apartments that, and the homes that we already have? Not the private homes, we're talking about the apartments, right?
That are like
Because there's
vacant, the big ones?
Because there's thousands and
Yeah.
thousands and
Yes.
thousands and thousands
Yes.
of rent-stabilized apartments that are being warehoused. So we're talking about the new development, but what about what's already been here?
Yeah.
Because before de Blasio came with turn the tide on the homeless and all this other business that was off the rails, we had more affordable, real low-income housing and truly affordable housing than almost anywhere else in the city.
So we're in a bit of trouble
And
there.
hold up, last thing. A lot of this is happening because our elected officials take the special interest money, if not for their campaign, oftentimes for their special projects, so we don't see it when we're looking at what's being donated.
All right, so good.
So what, my
So-
question is actually, what are you all doing to protect what's already been here?
Yeah, so a couple of things there, just in case that was lodged at me. I don't take real estate money, I never have in my entire career.
No.
Wait, very quick, no, even in general, I'm the one,
It may not be real estate money.
I don't take any special interest money. I take money from residents of the city of New York. My average donation is $47, and no one, I guarantee everybody that's seeing me right now is like, who is this kid and where did he come from? I surprised Brooklyn. I don't come from party politics. Nobody has seen me in party politics. I've never been a part of Frank Seddio, Vito Lopez, Rodney Bichard. I don't come from the Eric Adams camp. I don't come from the Hakeem Jeffries camp. I'm a small brown boy from Williamsburg, Brooklyn, that decided to do things the right way, and people rewarded me for it. They rewarded me for it because I am sincere. I am genuine, and I don't have anything to hide. You can go through all my books, and you won't find a dollar from anybody that isn't a resident of Brooklyn. So that's the first thing. The second, and that's why I do what I do, because I'm not afraid of anything. I don't need to, I'm happy to be the borough president, but trust me, I'm not gonna lose sleep if nobody wants to elect me again for the positions I'm taking. I'm gonna go down being who I am. The second thing is, you're right about the rent stabilization. But recently, at the state level, which I think your state reps should be here to have that conversation. One, a vacancy tax. The city of New York doesn't have a vacancy tax. Everybody heard of BlackRock here. These are people that are buying 80% of new homes. This is some ridiculous statistic, and I'm making this up. I am making this up. These are fake numbers, but it's close. 80% of new purchases of homes in America are happening by conglomerations, by LLCs. They're not happening by normal folks saying, hey, I want to buy a $500,000 house. No, LLC, somebody is paying $600,000 for the house, and then they just let it sit there as an asset, or they rent it out at ridiculous prices. Vacancy tax. If the New York City was to say, your primary residence, we're gonna let you live in it and be perfectly fine with it. If you own any other property and it's vacant, we're gonna charge you a 20% tax on that. It'll encourage them to be like, I don't wanna leave that empty because it's no longer an asset. If we're charged 20% tax rate on it, we're gonna now rent it out and give it to the people. That would be the ideal situation. The problem is, unlike me, the people in the state do take special interest money, and right now, Rebney gets a seat at the table that's equal or higher than the elected officials. Some elected officials are sitting across Rebney, not other elected officials. And that, I think, is a big problem, but it's part of why the vacancy tax never happened. Now, the rent regulation, there was something that just happened at the state level that I think is gonna hurt us. Before, if a person has a rent stabilized, it depends. I'll let you be the judge of this. If you have a rent stabilized apartment and it needs a repair, there was a max amount that you could charge to a resident in a rent-stabilized apartment based on that repair that is happening. They've done away with that and increased the amount that they could charge significantly. So now, let's say you do the repair, the rent goes from $1,200 to $1,600, which is a lot, but it was what it was in the past. Now they can go up $2,000, $2,500, $3,000 based on how much they spend on the apartment. That's a big deal right now that we gotta account for, because a lot of these rent-stabilized units that are gonna go through repairs are going to become less affordable because of the work that was done at the state level. So I would just say, almost all your questions, the vacancy tax, state issue. The destabilization of apartments, state issue. The campaign finance is the best way to clean up money in politics, so I would encourage you guys to support that as well.
Hold on. So not just the state,
we need to make something clear historically. The 1961 zoning ordinance was specifically designed politically to not be comprehensive and to not be long-term in favor of the development community. The city of Yes is at least democratic. It spreads the development, but it is not comprehensive or long-term. And when all those holes are filled up in the basements and backyards and on the avenue blocks, that development pressure is going to come back to bite us again. So all we're doing with this, I'm not saying it's a viable thing to do and it's a democratic thing to do. But when it gets done, that housing pressure is going to come back and bite us again until we do his comprehensive plan with considerations for public services and so forth. This city has never done that. It tried it with the Regional Planning Commission. That fell on its face. The development community controls us, and it will not let us do comprehensive long-term planning.
I agree 100% with everything that was said. I'm the first borough president in the history of the city to do a comprehensive plan, specifically because of this issue. It is absolutely right. It is maddening that we have no comprehensive plan in Brooklyn, in New York City. And I agree. I think Eric Adams, even though I think that this policy that you're saying it's not comprehensive and it's not long-standing, I do think it's a step in the right direction, personally. I think we're going in the right direction. We got a lot more work to do. This is so, I think, so insignificant to the greater need of housing that we have. And we're gonna fight to the death. Can you imagine a real comprehensive plan and the conversation that we would have? Because what a comprehensive plan would do is say, hey, what do we want the city to look like in 20 years? And we're,
Until you're mayor.
well, I wanna say, that's gonna be a hard one. I might lose my mayoralty right here. No, I'm not trying to run. That is not true. I unequivocally said I'm not running. Stop it. Stop it. No, look, I've been unequivocally saying that I really enjoy being Brooklyn Borough President. I'm going to continue to do that. I'm not running against Eric Adams. But I guess what I'm saying is you're right. Until we don't have leadership at the top, at the governor level and at the mayoral level, that wants to have a serious conversation about comprehensive planning, we're going to be fighting these fights until that happens. So there's no end in sight right now. We're not going to be able to affect meaningful change in the work that we're doing with development until we don't see a change at the top when it comes to our leader.
And at this point, it's 8:15. I think we really have to let Councilmember Hudson talk about her land use framework. We've been talking about, community planning and saying things about, changing the as-of rights.
So I'm going to leave now. I just want to say this was fun. This was fun. This was fun. I care deeply about making sure that you're informed. I really do. I will be making a personal request to DCP to be at the next, whenever.
We've asked them for May 23rd as a public hearing date, and they haven't responded to it.
I will be calling them tomorrow morning, and I hope by tomorrow afternoon you guys get a response to that. That is deeply important because we have a lot of questions that need to be answered. I have questions that need to be answered, and I want to make sure you get that. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. Don't forget to spread love. All right, guys? Thank you.
Which one is this now? You're saying the one that they claim they lobbied me?
Yes.
Okay.
The Real Deal, February 29th, 2024. Says that they
I don't know.
lobbied you.
And local, people say this all the time. And local community groups, do you know who the local community groups are?
No, I don't.
Okay.
We're here at the local community group, but nobody here was spoken to.
Right, but they're claiming that they spoke to the local community groups, so.
They said they lobbied you.
They haven't lobbied me, and I'm telling you that, so. So we can share the, where did Suki go? Okay. Okay. Well, I spoke to her earlier about sharing the framework. It's 111 pages, so it's quite extensive. So we don't have it printed out, but I'm just going to share a little bit about the actual framework and what we're asking of developers. But essentially, this framework was created because the ULURP process, I think, is deeply flawed. And to change the ULURP process would have to go through a charter revision. That usually takes some years. It's a very, very long process. And so as an attempt to circumvent that and do what we could at a local level, we embarked on a district-wide survey that essentially surveyed folks, asking people about what their priorities are, what they value, and when it comes to land use and development specifically, what's important and what might they want to see. I think similarly to what the borough president was saying, you know, oftentimes well, he wasn't saying this part, but I'll say that when projects, in my experience, having been formerly on a community board myself, when projects come to a community board, it's almost like they're already fully baked, right? And they come to the community board and they say, well, we can tweak this, we can change the color of the bricks, we can change the size of the windows, we can maybe add a garden in the front, but essentially it's the same project. And my attempt at changing that is to say, we want you to come to the community with a blank slate and take what the community actually wants and needs and should have as a priority, and then build a project. And that's just not what we've seen happen. So this is an attempt to do that. It's not perfect, as you know, nothing is, but it's the best that we could do to address the specific needs of the community. And as the borough president said, it is very aggressive. There was an article that came out, I think yesterday or today, I think yesterday, you know, saying essentially that developers have looked at the framework and have said there's like no way ever that they would be able to do any of this. I don't believe that that's true. I think that we've created a system that has allowed them to do whatever they want to do, and we've not created a system that actually prioritizes the community and the community's needs. And so that's what we're trying to do with this, this development framework. So what we've done is, I know AMI came up earlier. Currently, we use, and I think most people here know this, but we use federal standards for the area median income. And area median income in New York includes other counties outside of the city, which drives up the area median income. So what we're saying in this framework is you have to take into account the area median income for the residents in the particular community or neighborhoods that you're building for. So I represent Crown Heights, Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, and Prospect Heights. So for each of those communities, if you're gonna put in a development, you have to be thinking about the AMI of those specific communities, not the general AMI that is typically used. And then we have tracks. I don't want to, because we've gone quite a while already, I'm not going to get into like the very nitty-gritty details, and again, we can share this out, but there are essentially tracks and options that developers can take. So like I mentioned before, any developer that even hints that they're trying to build something in the district, we give them the framework and we say, we don't even want to have a conversation with you until you've looked at the framework and you've, you know, made an honest effort to engage with the community so that we know that you're actually working towards building something that the community, you know, where the community needs have been addressed. So essentially what we're saying is there's one track where, you know, affordability criteria is the number one, you know, piece or priority. And then with that, there are other baseline criteria that includes things like universal design principles, which I always describe as ADA on steroids. So ADA, you know, you can think of as like ramps and things like that to get into buildings. Universal design is more like wider doorways. It's levers as handles rather than doorknobs, so that if you have arthritis or some sort of mobility challenge, you can use like your elbow, for example, to turn to open a door rather than having to turn a doorknob. It's proactive pest management, sustainability, and then thinking about workforce and who we're hiring and what we're paying them to work on those projects. So those are the baseline criteria. So there are two tracks. There's a track where if you're taking into account the deeply affordable AMIs that pertain to the district, and you're going above and beyond the MIH, then you would have to meet fewer of the baseline criteria. I think, can you still hear me? Okay. And so then the other track is essentially, if you're doing more, thank you. The other track is if you're sticking more closely to MIH, then you have to use more of the baseline criteria. So everything that we have created has been based on the survey results that we did across the district. And I don't have, like I said, it's 111 pages, and I don't know the page where the statistics are, but off the top of my head, I think it was something like 78% of the people that we surveyed said that affordability was the number one priority, the number one concern, and that was across all levels of income. So even people who are making more than 100% AMI said affordability is their number one concern. So those are basically like the top lines of the framework, but I'm happy to answer questions. Yep.
So, I'm sure you know this from working with Hester Street, but they become CV9. We didn't get any sort of engagement. This isn't your theirs. They came a week before survey review. We asked them to give us more time to do the survey. They said there's nothing we can do about it as possible. So right now, I read the framework. There's stuff in there that I think would have been enhanced by actual participation from people here. They literally came here a week before it was done. You had an event at Ronald McNair Park. It was all people from north of Eastern Parkway. So I think that's coming to this board, to this group, and to this part of the district. We need to have more conversations, basically, because I think our perspective has been left out.
So a couple of things. One, we did an event at Ronald McNair Park that wasn't just people north of Eastern Parkway. We had plenty of folks from this side of Eastern Parkway, and that's specifically why we did it at Ronald McNair Park. We were very intentional about the events we did, the type of engagement we did. Alicia was out actually actively telling people not to complete the survey, so perhaps that could have contributed to lower engagement. We door knocked, we didn't knock on doors, but we slid the survey under doors in Ebbets Field, in Tivoli Towers, and many of the surrounding bigger buildings. So we did a lot of engagement.
Well, it was Hester Street that said that they didn't do the engagement. That was a week before the surveys were due. So that's what
I don't know why Hester Street would say they didn't do the engagement, because we did do the engagement, and that was all part of the plan. And we did that type of engagement all across the district.
So
and we sent out.
Tenants did not. I'm sure you got some folks from Ebbets Field, but tenants did not have insight into that. They didn't even know that it existed, and more importantly, it never came to this board or to this land use committee.
It wasn't in the land use committee, but all of the district managers of each of the community boards across the district sat on the advisory.
Right, I understand that. I'm just saying, I'm telling you the way that it worked out is that we didn't get a say. I don't think there's anything wrong. I don't think
you can speak for everybody, because there were plenty of people who did get a say. So I hear what you're saying. Certainly not everybody got a say, but we did our best to reach as many people as possible. We sent out emails, we held events, we were very intentional about where we held the events, the time that we held the events, who we were trying to engage. We were extremely intentional about that. So there are also, like I said, people who made assumptions about what it was I was doing and didn't want to participate, and so I can't I can't do anything about that. But we did our very best to engage as many people as possible.
Right.
Thank you.
The only reason I'm pushing back on this is because I'm telling you that based on the people that are here right now and the people that I work with, the tenants that I work with, we don't feel like we got to have input into this.
I hear you.
That's just the fact. So That's all I'm saying. I don't want to,
And,
I don't think
yeah.
that should be diminished or.
I'm not trying to diminish it. I'm just telling you the work that we've done, and I hear what you're saying. Julia?
If
It
these
is.
plans, Councilmember, am I up? Yeah, Councilmember, if these plans went through, how would you make sure that they were mandated?
Which
Like
plans?
the ones that you've just proposed, that, you know, a developer
Oh, like
comes
for a
in
project?
and they ask for these things, and let's say you come to an agreement. If you come to an agreement and you start having a building, what is going to maintain this a year after your, you know, after your term is over, or whatever? Who would be, you know, in City of Planning and in City of Yes, we're told, you know, if these things go through, you're to call 311. That's not gonna help us. So my question is, I understand what your plan is,
Yeah,
such
this
as it
is-
is, but who would make sure that it would maintain, like you?
Well, I think you all should and could. I mean, like I said, I can't, changing ULURP would be, you know, that's a conversation that we have been having at the council, but again, it's a years-long process, and so I'm not saying that changing that system isn't possible, but this was my attempt to do something within the power that I have. And, you know, as the council member, with the time that I have as the council member, to do something to address the concerns that I have and that the community has, and to create some sort of better system within the existing, you know, problematic and flawed system. So once my time is up, you know, I think it's you all, the community, who is going to be electing the next person, to say, listen, we think the council member did a great framework and we'd like to see you use the same framework. But there's nothing that I can do legally to mandate that the person who comes after me use the same framework. But it's the first time that this has been done, and so I am having conversations with some of my colleagues who are doing similar things. I've talked to the speaker who helped fund the survey in the first place, and trying to get her to make this a council-wide initiative. You know, but we're going little by little and, you know, member by member. But my hope is that every council member will do a similar framework where they're actually surveying their community and finding out, you know, the needs and priorities that the communities have, so that they can then go to the developers with those demands. Yes?
I don't know who the developers are.
You don't what?
I don't know who the developers are.
Okay.
You give your framework to them, I don't know who the developers are, any of them. But you give the framework to each that approach you or your office or somebody in your office. Is there a list of everyone you give this framework to since you initiated the framework on your website?
No, but we can publish something.
Please do.
Yeah, I think it's only been
Because it's never,
two.
each building around our neighborhood is a different developer. And
Yeah, so like I said, so if a developer comes to, usually what will happen is a developer will come to our office and they'll say, we want to talk to you about a development before the ULURP process. And so in the past, what we've said is you got to go to the community first. Now what we're saying is, well, here's our framework, look at our framework. We'll have a discussion after you've looked at the framework and you've gone to the community and, you know, all of that, but at least you have the framework, so you can't say that you don't have the framework, that you don't know what the community wants, what the community needs, that maybe it can also help inform the conversations you have when you go to the community, so that you can say, listen, we're looking at the council members' framework, and we know in this community, a grocery store is a priority versus maybe like a daycare center or something like that.
see what they built previously and what they're taking our information from, and using it in another neighborhood when they retain it. Because they've done that too. I've
I'm not sure I'm following. Say that again, or I can't hear.
We refuse development in our neighborhood.
Mhm.
They use some of our great ideas.
Oh, I
and
see.
They go to another neighborhood.
Yeah,
And they do the same thing for another city.
right,
And my idea of what developers is they're not New York City developers.
right.
They're not United States developers. They're international.
I see.
So that's what if you give a name, even if they don't go ahead and build anything.
Yeah, we can share with you. Like I said, I think it's two. I'd have to double check. I think it's only two people who have approached us. One of which was the one on Empire Boulevard, and we gave them the framework. So I'm happy to list everybody.
I've looked at some of their board members.
Who's board members?
The developers, the various ones, however
Okay.
they match. Same people.
Okay.
On these, whether they're
Yeah.
building in a Caribbean island resort or they're building a building. Same people.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, some are affordable housing developers, you know, so their boards might be similar to other affordable housing developers. Is that it? Okay.
I just want
Thank
to,
you.
Kristen,
Oh.
a quick comment. I put in District 35 survey in my email. I have an email from Councilmember Hudson's office, Community Board 9, from Cunningham's office, from Jay Sorid, from CrownH.info. So I have 5 emails about the survey in my inbox.
Yeah, we did extensive outreach.
So I want to thank you for putting this together on behalf of our district. And our Community Board 9 Housing Committee has passed a housing resolution, which I think speaks in more general terms to our district's priorities on that. And I think
And
our
I've met with the
members
chair of the
would
committee.
also like to offer some feedback on the
Yeah, my concern is, so I was involved in the AMOP process for 2 years. They came back with a draft framework that was nowhere close to the things that we had said like, it just did not match the levels of affordability that we were asking for. And I think, and this is a DCP thing, like we've dealt with this before too. It's really hard to get them to act in good faith. And so I'm wondering what you can do as part of this on their end so that they don't do that same sort of thing and say that they're going to do one thing and then come back with like this. It was not adequate what they brought.
So DCP's plan is separate and apart from the community plan that WXY put out. WXY was our consulting firm that did all of the facilitation of the community events and the workshops and all of that. And there's a difference too between the community plan and the framework that DCP put out. I think you're always going to see that. City planning, you know, no matter the administration, there's always going to be a goal that they have to build X number of units. I think here the borough president was talking about 100,000 units, but it's always going to be build X number of units almost essentially no matter what, right? So regardless of community input, whoever's opposed to it, whatever, this is our plan to build 100,000 units, and if we have to go into neighborhoods where we know there's less engagement, then we will do that just to get the units that we want. So city planning is always going to put forward a plan that they have to meet whatever goal the administration has set forth. That's why we did, you know, a community-led process with that rezoning. That was extensive, that spanned over several months, I think a year or more. We had a number of, you know, public sessions, and that's why also the plan that the community plan that was put out differs from what city planning's plan was. I think realistically we'll end somewhere between the two of those things, but it's incumbent upon the community to continue to push back and say, this is what we said, this is our feedback, here's our community plan, the community plan that actually addresses what we said, and those are the conversations that Councilmember Osei and I continue to have when we meet with the deputy mayors and people in the administration to push forward the rezoning, to say, this is what we've been saying from the beginning, this is what the community has said, this is what the community plan includes, and this is what we want to see. Hold on, let me go to the committee members.
One of the things that's concerning me, council member, is I've been sitting and listening for 2 hours to first the VP and yourself we're talking about the increase in housing, but what we're not talking about is, and I think Dion brought it up, the apartments, the affordable apartments that are being taken out of by warehousing, and the buildings that are gonna be happening. Where are those new builds gonna come from? And from what I've seen with the last, with gentrification, it was the harassment of tenants who own their apartments. I'm not hearing any plan in any of your plans that's gonna help them, that's gonna secure them, because there was a huge outcry where that first wave of gentrification happened. Predatory landlords trying to remove long-term tenants, and old homeowners being harassed by potential developers. Sell your house, you're too old, you can't take it. I mean, there are people testifying to that. I'm not hearing any structure in either one of your plans, and no one's mentioning it either.
So a couple things. One, the development framework is about new development, so it's not going to include that specifically. That's the Hester Street piece. The rezoning does include addressing housing preservation, and we're doing, like, we just held a housing workshop actually like a couple weeks ago, I think maybe last week, was it, 2 weeks ago, specifically to address housing preservation and keeping and maintaining affordable housing units. And then specifically regarding constituent cases, I mean, this is the work that we do literally every single day, is trying to hold these landlords accountable. The Attorney General just made, around deed theft, she made some of the actions around deed theft criminal. So now people can actually be prosecuted. But that was part of the problem, was that you have, a lot of times people come to us when it's too late. Right.
But
So
they've also been told by the time they get to you, they've passed any number of lawyers and spent all of their savings, and there's nothing you can do. There's nothing. How many, and I hate to be cliche, Black and brown homeowners were told that? So there has to be, for me, and I can only speak for Beverly,
Right.
there has to be a preventive measure.
Yep.
Because you know, one, when the city of Yes is finalized, notice when I say when, because we're fighting a bear right now with a stick. And when it's finalized, the predatory attitudes that are going to swoop down on our community and on older people in particular who have their houses paid for.
Yep.
People who are in long-term apartments, it's going to be overwhelming for all of us that do what we do.
So that's why we've continued. I mean, I know myself and the borough president have pushed our state colleagues to pass all of the good cause eviction, all of these, tenant protections. We've worked really, really hard to make sure that those laws have passed. We've not gotten everything, but some stuff is preempted by the state. In the city council specifically, we're now looking at like a deed theft package of bills to protect folks. So there are things, a lot of the things that we're doing, unfortunately, are piecemeal, right? So like as a council member, as one person, I do certain things in my district. We arm people with information. We go into buildings. We share information with people. We talk to family members. We have a lot of cases where people will come in talking about their siblings who live with a parent, who are taking advantage of the parent, are trying to sell the home, and it's sibling to sibling, fights and things that are happening. And we try to connect people to the right type of attorneys and, equip them with all the information possible. As chair of the aging committee, I do a lot of that work, and in conjunction with and collaboration with housing organizations to inform people. We host workshops. It's also getting the word out, right? And so we can host a workshop, we can do it virtually, we can do it in person, but it's not always hitting the people who really need that information. So I would encourage everyone, if you know of a workshop that we're doing, we're happy to partner with the community board specifically. If you know of homeowners that could benefit from something like that, but we do that stuff all the time. And like I said, we're looking at bills, but I think the Attorney General making some of the deed theft specific actions actually criminal was a huge step. And that was what we needed really years ago when this first started happening. and we first started seeing people losing their homes.
So if I could just say, as an example of how zoning interacts with some of this demolition and displacement that they're talking about, 285 Eastern Parkway, which I think is in your district, Michael Hollingsworth came to my meeting and he said, we have a 4-story rent stabilized building that the developer is trying to demolish because demolition is a legal loophole for destabilizing a building and getting rid of the remaining tenants. And under the current as-of-right zoning on Eastern Parkway, which is an R7A that allows up to 8 stories, he can build twice as much. And so it's financially profitable for him to knock down that building, get rid of all the tenants, and build a building that is twice as high with market rate units.
Right.
And so and those people will become homeless, as Beverly is saying. So I think what we're saying that can be done at the city level is to use zoning to protect people who already live here, whether they're tenants or homeowners, you know.
Well, zoning, I mean, that's a
It's the
different.
zoning that allows him to build higher.
Well,
If
first of
it's-
all, I mean, there are, I think, a lot of different entities and folks who are trying to, prevent that from happening. And I could say that, certainly my office is doing everything we can. Again, there's some things at the state level, like if they're going to apply for destabilization, that's something that we obviously would not support, and that we've made that very clear. But what you're talking about would require a downzoning, right? Like changing the existing zoning. That is, to use Beverly's term, that's a bear to tackle. To go to city planning and to say, so I don't think that's necessarily the thing that we need to solve for. I think it's preventing, and a lot of this stuff, again, is at the state level. It's preventing landlords and predatory landlords and building owners from even having the ability to do things like this and to empty out a whole building where you only have 3 or 4 people. Even just that alone is not safe. To have in such a massive, a large building, to have only 3 or 4 people living in that building doesn't seem safe, to me. And we see that all the time. And this is exactly what predatory landlords do. They scare people out. And most of the time, people don't even understand or know that they have the right to stay in their apartments. And that's exactly the information that we continue to try to get out to people. But trying to address it by downzoning, I think that's a much more difficult fight than trying to continue our advocacy at the state level to make sure that we're holding landlords like this accountable. There are also things that we should be, and I'm not somebody who is usually for, more criminalization, but I think oftentimes we're criminalizing the wrong people for the wrong things. And now we've seen the DA in Brooklyn, I think the DA in Manhattan, and I want to say the DA in the Bronx has a case, maybe a tentative case. But the Manhattan DA and the Brooklyn DA have prosecuted landlords. There was a landlord that was at Rikers Island just the other day, and I'm sure he's still there. There was a case in, I forget what neighborhood it was in, but in Brooklyn, where a landlord was basically, we heard this at our budget hearing today with DOB, the Department of Buildings, where they were saying there was a house that was being built. They did not go to DOB. They didn't pull any permits. They didn't do anything according to the way they were supposed to do it. And there was an accident, and a 34-year-old man was killed. And they're prosecuting those developers, those builders, because they didn't do anything the way they were supposed to do it. But we need, DAs and prosecutors who will actually hold those folks accountable for doing those types of things.
In terms of, since you brought it up, I wasn't going to bring it up in this meeting, but talking about advocacy at the state level, you introduced a resolution in February that was in support of Senator Comrie's bill, I think it's S6352A, which is actually what Housing Justice for All and Crown Heights Tenant Union was considered the absolute worst possible scenario.
Yeah.
It's a vacancy reset bill. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention and hopefully be able to have the conversations to withdraw that, because that bill is really, really bad.
It's been withdrawn. So one of my staffers submitted that bill in advance of any of the advocacy stuff, thinking that it would have, and I can't, I didn't, it wasn't my, I didn't ask him to do it, so I can't speak to exactly why, but he had read something and thought that it would be helpful at some point a long time ago, and then everything changed, and so we withdrew it.
Oh, great. Yeah,
So
because it was
it's
written, I mean, that was written by Rebney, so it didn't make sense that, I thought
Whatever he submitted was not written by Rebney, but I think,
No, I mean, I read the resolution, like it was.
I know, but what I'm saying is, when he submitted it, the way legislation works, you can submit something last year, or a year and a half ago, or 2 years, and then it doesn't, and then you introduce it way back when, and it doesn't move, and so.
Oh, I wasn't talking about your resolution, I was talking about
Oh,
the
the state-
Senate bill.
yeah.
Yeah, that was written by Rebney, so,
Yeah.
okay, that
Yeah,
clarifies
it's been
it.
withdrawn, yeah.
All right, thanks.
And that was an error on our part.
Today's news carries an article that council speaker.
Wait, she didn't recognize you yet.
Would you recognize me like okay, go ahead.
The conversation generates an idea that the community board should support a new program called government-built, rent-controlled public housing.
Okay, Joe, you're.
Madam Council Member, today's news carries an article that, thank you. Joe Gonzalez. Today's news carries an article that a proposal has been delivered to Council Speaker Adrian Adams that would call for a bill in the City Council that would mandate the entire City Council approve of every agency commissioner. As it is now, the mayor picks who he wants to run agencies, anything from the police department to the city planning. That would give the body politic the authority over who these agencies' heads are, and in some level, you can sort of vet them for what their policies are. Have you taken a position on that proposal that the council should be able to confirm or deny an agency head? And if so, what would that position be?
Well, I'm definitely supportive of that. And just to be clear, it's something that we're considering. There's no bill yet. I don't believe it would be for every single commissioner, but it would be for the vast majority of commissioners. And I support anything that would empower the city council and remove, sort of carte blanche approvals for the mayor. There are plenty of positions that the mayor has, sole authority. Okay, well.
Okay, Alicia?
Please do.
You talk about a community plan, and then you talked about the Department of City Planning. Have you taken into account that every community board that has submitted a community plan to the Department of City Planning, after the Department of City Planning got their hands on it, each community board rejected the plan, and the plan went into effect anyway? So let me tell you what communities that was. That was Gowanus, that was Soho and NoHo, that was East New York, that was downtown Brooklyn, that was Williamsburg, that was East Harlem. Every time the community engages in the community plan, at the end of the day, it's the Department of City Planning who has the final say over that plan. And every community that has engaged in such a plan has disapproved the final result, and it still went into law. This is the policy and politics of our community. Also, we're talking about, let's just do an example. CB8 had a rezoning in 2012. They increased their numbers. But what happened by the rezoning is that it targets developers into a community. It says that you're going to be able to build higher. You can buy cheap land, and then you can get heights from it. It's called speculation. They went inside CB8 and did a massive amount of speculation. CB8 lost 20,000 black people as a result of that rezoning. A year later, they were supposed to come into our community, and that was in 2014. Our community, however, stopped that rezoning. We still maintain 66% of our residents are still here.
We have 66% of the people in our community are people of color. We have not lost 20,000. We lost maybe about 4,000 to 5,000. And so you want us to engage in a rezoning proposal where the end product will be dependent upon the Department of City Planning, that every community, every black community has rejected, including white communities, and that's Soho and Gowanus. Increase development in our neighborhood, which will increase speculation in our neighborhood. This is what they do. Every black community in New York City that's had a rezoning has lost a substantial amount of black residents. There's not one rezoning that has been done in New York City in a black or brown community that actually has protected the community residents. They have never protected. We are always vulnerable because of speculation. So now you're proposing the same scenario for us to do it again. Now, if we don't learn from other communities, if we don't see pattern over 2 decades, then we will fall victim to the same thing. If you don't see what has happened in other communities, we've been protecting this community as much as we could, because that rezoning that was proposed for 2014 was giving our entire community away. We will have skyscrapers on Franklin, on Bedford, on Flatbush, on Nostrand, on Rogers, but we stopped that. As a community, we stopped that. And you don't see that. The only development that you see that's higher than a 7-story building are the ones that our elected officials approve of. They have to go through they have to go to our elected officials, and they're the ones who keep approving these development projects. Lori Cumble approved the Franklin Avenue one. Even though we fought against it, she approved it. Now we got 17 stories. Okay? Lori Cumbo did the Bedford Union Armory. Okay? Okay? So right now, we have a choice. We keep the zoning that we have, or we allow the Department of City Planning, who basically is run by the real estate industry. People, if you don't know that, then exactly, because we done seen it. And then you give up everything. You give up every corridor. You give up Empire. You give up Flatbush. You give up Nostrand, and there will be nothing that you can do. So you can holler. Uptown, they hollered. They stood in front of the traffic. They got arrested. They threw paper money at...
There's no rezoning being proposed over here.
They sat there and threw money, fake money at the city council. That zoning went through.
So there's no rezoning that's being proposed over here. The rezoning that I'm working on is a community-led rezoning. It's on Atlantic Avenue, and it's only because the community literally asked for the rezoning. So Community Board 8 has been working on a rezoning. It was previously called M Crown. They wanted to rezone the area. They weren't able to get it done in years past, and so we took a look at it. We changed some of the catchment area, and we're creating a rezoning that is actually led by the community. So I think what you're referring to is what have been called community rezonings versus community-led rezonings. And so the rezoning that I'm doing on Atlantic Avenue is not that. And my district has lost 20% of its black population in the last 10 years. And so I'm not gonna allow that to happen in the next 10, and that's exactly why we're doing the rezoning. As I mentioned before, the rezoning is a comprehensive plan for the area. We've seen building after building after building go up along Vanderbilt Avenue, Atlantic Avenue, and so many other intersections. And what the community said was, we don't want to see that anymore, building by building, one by one. What we want to see is a comprehensive plan for the area that addresses new development and also includes infrastructure upgrades, street redesigns, all of that. So everything that we've done has been led and informed by the community, and whatever is approved has to go through the ULURP process. So everybody will have an opportunity to continue to have a part. But I'm not going to continue to go back and forth about...
So one of the things that we have to bear in mind as a community, is when we hear information, we have to be able to disseminate fact from fiction. One of the things that we have noticed as a community and as a person on the community board, there were individuals that were able to use tactics to keep us from getting information out, to keep us from doing what was best for our community. And it's important, she's spoken enough. It's important that we as community members listen and be informed. That's what's important. Not one person carries the facts. Not one person carries the facts. All of us have a little bit of truth. So all of us are in charge of knowing what it is.
Thank you, Councilmember Hudson. It is almost 9 o'clock. We need to finish up. Ms. Boyd, please sit down. You've had your say. Ms. Boyd, you've had your say. Please sit down. Thank you, Councilmember Hudson, for coming. Okay. Do any of the committee members have any, I mean, it's unfortunate the council member just left, but do you have any comments or thoughts about the affordable housing tracts that she's proposed?
Yeah, on our YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to make the point earlier that, and a lot of you were at this meeting with Hester Street when they were figuring this out, and we told them very clearly, like, we haven't been consulted about this. So my concern is that even the stuff that's coming up along Franklin Avenue right now is going to go before the council member, and she's going to put forward this framework that we had nothing to do with. And so I think somehow we need to be able to advocate for that engagement, because right now it's, I mean, the framework, they may say that it's aggressive, but it's like, yeah, it's not aggressive enough for me to be able to say that it's not going to displace people. It's still going to displace people.
But guys, and all of you have seen it in your churches, in your school. We have already seen a significant number of people of color displaced. This is prior to all the other crap we're facing right now. Gentrification all on its own has done that. So that's why we need to be informed, not from one person, not from two people. We need to show up, acquire information for ourselves. That's our job. That's what community boards are for. That's what any number of organizations, tenant advocacy groups are for. That's our job.
Okay, thank you, Beverly. And so are there any other comments or questions from members of the public or the committee at this point? Any other comments or questions from members of the public or the committee at this point? Fred?
No, I just want to, just very, very briefly, I want to thank the committee for all the work that you've been doing, as well as the subcommittee work that's been happening with respect to City of Yes. This is a critical conversation because this is a conversation that sets up a lot of things that we would normally do as a matter of course in terms of land use decisions are going to be made as text amendments, and they are taken away, and those conversations we don't have anymore, which is why we really need to be very clear in terms of what position we're going to land. I leave it to the committee to finish with their work in terms of the recommendations that are being planned, but definitely the commitment is, as a board, we are going to be very vigorous in terms of our response with this and making sure we're following this with our elected officials, including the borough president, including the borough board, including going up to the city council as far as this needs to go. But absolutely, we're talking about the future of our community, because once these go through, this really affects development and how it happens and where it happens in our district. So it's a very crucial conversation. And I implore all members of the public to please remain engaged, to please come to the meetings. There will be meetings that are coming up with respect to the 962 Franklin Avenue rezoning that has been proposed, so that information will be coming out as soon as that's been designated, as well as a proposed hearing on City of Yes, as well as an actual vote that will happen at the community board meeting. I believe those votes are actually probably gonna more likely happen in June, but I'm just asking for everyone to please make sure, if you are not already subscribed to our e-blast, please make sure you do so with the district office. Please encourage your neighbors, friends, families, places of worship to also be a part of that as well. As a board, we have 50 members, which cannot possibly cover a district of over 100,000. So we depend on everyone to please make sure you are tapping your neighbors, tapping your loved ones, and telling them these are conversations that we need to make sure we are heard as a community. Again, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
If I have heard of any number of obscene things in my life with respect to civic engagement, I think probably the stupidest, if not dangerous thing I ever heard is that under this city of yes, I want to say something else, but I might get arrested. They're gonna propose, the proposal is that businesses can open up in apartment houses? Can you ladies and gentlemen think of coming out of your house, a woman, young kids, and their customers lining up because there's a bodega on the second floor, a barbershop on the third floor? Can you imagine what the foot traffic is gonna be in and out of your building? The front door will be broken because customers will want to get in and out of the building. I mean, this thing is as stupid as you could possibly get. I mean, do we look stupid? Do we have stupid written across our forehead? That would even be proposed to allow businesses to open up in apartment houses? That's all I got to say. Good night, everyone. Get home safe.
Can I say one last thing? I don't need that. Listen, everybody, I don't need. When we go to the polls to vote, make sure that here we establish group collective interests and vote according to the group collective interests. What we do as Black folk now, we decide every election. Most of our white counterparts are split down the middle. The Latinos, the Spanish-speaking folks are all kind of like scattered. If you're Dominican, you vote a certain way. If you're Puerto Rican, you vote a certain way. If you're Ecuadorian, you vote a certain way. Well, we're the ones that decide elections. I can take you all the way back to 1964, the year I was born, when that racist Lyndon Johnson was trying to become president and have his own administration after the assassination of John Kennedy. And there was 22 million black people in the country. 11 million of them were registered voters. Not saying who was Republican and who was Democrat, but he won because the 3 million black people of the 11 million registered voted 95% to him. When de Blasio fast forward got elected, 96% of us voted in the first time, then he pissed us off with the turn tide of homeless, and he lost 6%, and 90% of us still voted for him. And we get less than half of 1% of all the city contracts. Do your research. 67% of black people in this city work for the city or state government or some kind of, official capacity. But yet half of 1% of people who look like us manage the pension system. We got to establish what our group collective interests are and vote according to that. Because we're the only group of people that don't do that. And then we end up having the same conversation every election cycle.
Thank you, Dion. I think.
Which is asinine.
Thank you,
We
Dion.
can actually do something about it.
And I think in a land use, I just want to.
I'm campaigning against her at Spring 25.
Okay, and I just want to say, thank you for your statement. I just want to say from a land use perspective, done deal are words that I never want to hear because, as Dion said, you do have the power. But you need to educate yourselves about how land use and zoning works. There are a lot of things that are very tricky. A lot of people don't fully understand what the impacts are going to be on their community. But if you do know, then you can advocate for your interest, and you don't have to accept done deal. You don't have to accept that's too hard, right? So I absolutely agree with Dion. So before we finish the committee, I would like us to talk about the committee fair. We did already vote on what our activities are going to be. One of them is going to be putting together these poster boards with maps of the district and photographs of different types of development that could take place to try and educate people in the district. So I'd like to get maybe some volunteers to help me with that. Beverly, you're going to help me. And Dante and Mia, I think we're going to need a printing budget. I think we asked last time for $100 or something. I'm sure that would cover it.
We'll get it.
And the iPads. So this is something that, you know, for the public that's here, our community fair, June 2nd, right?
First.
June 1st. Saturday, is it Saturday? Saturday, June 1st from
10 to 11.
10
oh, my goodness.
to
10
11.
10 to 1.
From 10 to 1 in Ronald McNair Park. Come out. ULURP is going to be tabling. We're going to give you great information about zoning, about City of Yes, and about what could happen to you on your block and in your building. So come out and get some information. Sign up with the community and the community board to be on our list so that you can get the information to empower yourselves.
Get that information.
That's all I have to say. I guess, can I get a motion to adjourn? Okay, thank you.